You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
We now wander off the beaten path with an update from the Reefer Reporter.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so glad I have a co-host that goes, "Shut up, Cindy. We're supposed to be on air," but in a very polite way. He didn't tell me to shut up. He said, "I just
glanced down and I saw the door."
I think we're late." I was like, "Oh shit!" Hello, welcome to the Reefer Reporters. Today it is November 10th, and I think I forgot to change that on the explanation. So it's going to say November 7th, but really it's November 10th. And we are live, and here's me proving it all over again here from the Legacy420.com news desk as we bring you our global Reefer Reporters here on the Pace Radio Network. That's 2 screw ups I've had so far today. So we are definitely live. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning. It's a great morning so far.
I have to laugh at myself, right? Because, oh my goodness. That's terrible. That's terrible.
But it's great to get the laughs in and maybe we get the mistakes out of the way.
That's right. Maybe all the stories will go perfectly smoothly. Okay. Anyway, we have 8 stories. We have 4 coming before the break and 4 coming after the break. A couple of them are kind of long, so we're going to have to watch ourselves and make sure we get in on the times given, especially because I was babbling and made us late this morning. I'll take complete responsibility for that. So we're gonna hop right into the first story. We're gonna go over to StratCan, and we're gonna talk about this story. Of course, hits home here in Nova Scotia. Constitutional challenge brews following Indigenous dispensary raids in Nova Scotia. They literally picked up some of these dispensaries and put them on trucks and took them away. Literally.
Wow. Well, we're gonna find out this story here. A Mi'kmaq band counselor from Millbrook First Nation in Nova Scotia, arrested in a 2020 police raid of Indigenous cannabis dispensaries, is mounting a constitutional defense, arguing that his right to sell cannabis on First Nations land is constitutionally protected. And it is, damn it. Nova Scotia RCMP officers raided Chris Gugu's high-grade smoke shop, which sits on reserve land in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia in December 2020 as part of a series of raids on 5 unlicensed cannabis dispensaries operating in the area. Gugu was arrested and charged with illegal possession and distribution of cannabis.
I remember when this happened. It was infuriating. Gugu, who is being represented by longtime cannabis rights lawyer Jack Lloyd, is now God bless Jack Lloyd, is now staging a constitutional challenge under Section 35 of the Constitution Act, which protects Indigenous treaty rights in Canada. Specifically, Gugu is referring to the 1752 Peace and Friendship Treaty, which promises the Mi'kmaq free liberty to bring to sale to Halifax or any other settlement within the province skins, feathers, fowl, fish, and any other thing they shall have to sell. That's a very important part. Exercising our inherent treaty rights is something that all of our people should be doing freely and not have to be harassed by any bodies of government, said Gugu. At a rally of supporters outside a Nova Scotia provincial courthouse in early October, where he was appearing to set trial dates.
And this is on Indigenous land, first of all. Mm-hmm. So they don't have any legal right on that land.
No.
The constitutional case will proceed next October, within 4 days of hearings scheduled in advance of Gugu's criminal trial in November 2023. I am presenting a constitutional challenge to the court, and I am standing on my Aboriginal and treaty rights to provide cannabis as a medicine, Gugu wrote in a subsequent social media post. I always stand up for our inherent and treaty rights as sovereign peoples on our sovereign lands, whether it be for fishing, hunting, cannabis, or tobacco, land, or resources. Gugu is being backed by former president of the National Indian Brotherhood, precursor to the Assembly of First Nations, and one of the authors of Section 35, Chief Del Riley, who has argued that the section grants Indigenous communities the authority to write their own cannabis regulation in parallel to federal and provincial law and to sell cannabis on reserved land. You're actually in a hell of a good position here, he told members of the Millbrook community in April.
Yes. I remember this. I'm gonna come back for a second. I remember when this happened, and the cops came in, and they literally brought flatbeds with them and lifted some of these tiny homes and put them on the flatbeds and took them away. They brought them back eventually, but they literally put these little dispensaries on the flatbeds and took them
I would
away.
love to say who gave them the authority to go on Indigenous land first of all. And
Well, nobody, but and that's part of the constitutional challenge that
they have no rights on that land.
No, they don't. And that's what he's doing. He's going to challenge that. He's going to say that none of this should be happening. You should be throwing out these charges, and he'll win. His November 2023 trial will be tossed, and there will be gone. And that'll be awesome when that happens. But
as far as I'm concerned, if you're Indigenous, you could sell it anywhere you want. Wherever you live is your land, period.
Which I completely agree with. And that's what this is, that's what he's trying to do with this constitutional challenge, right?
Yep.
Yeah. However, in 2019, Millbrook First Nation Chief Bob Glode also said that such businesses are not supported by treaty rights. No, because we just read up here. I'm going to scroll back to what I really kind of accentuated. Other things they shall have to sell.
What he's saying is there's nothing in there saying that they can grow cannabis and distribute cannabis. Well, no, it wasn't even thought of when they put these treaties out or when they wrote these treaties.
That's why this is in here, and or any other thing they shall have to sell. That's why that is in there. And they have cannabis as medicine to sell, so they're selling it. There is no treaty right protecting them in regards to selling, growing, or distribution of cannabis whatsoever, Glode said. It's not a treaty or an Aboriginal right because it does not state that anywhere. Our treaty rights basically focus around hunting and gathering. Cannabis grows wild and you have to gather it. Hunting or gathering, not growing and distribution, he said. Individuals feel that it is a right and they're extending it beyond the meaning of how the treaties are laid out in black and white, and it puts us in a difficult situation. Since then, the chief has changed his tune. Since that time, I have to continue reading what Glode said. Since that time, council has debated and discussed how to advance a cannabis strategy that is respectful of and a benefit to all community members, carried out in a way that prioritizes community sovereignty, safety, and well-being of everyone, Glode then said in 2021. So he's changing his mind.
Yeah. After hearing from everybody else that said he's an idiot. This is consistent with our inherent right to govern and our fiduciary duty to exercise jurisdiction over matters such as the community's health and safety as a whole, he said. We continue to discuss the development of a cannabis regime and measures necessary for the Millbrook First Nations residents' safety and enjoyment of life. Case could clarify the jurisdictional disputes. The case, if escalated to the federal courts, which it will be, could prove significant for the nascent Indigenous cannabis movement, which has sought in parts to operate independently of, some say, in defiance of federal legalization rules. Many Indigenous cannabis operators argue they have been effectively shut out of Canadian legalization, and support has grown for so-called sovereign cannabis industry. There are estimated to be over 300 Indigenous cannabis dispensaries now operating across the country. A similar constitutional challenge, being brought by a group of 10 Anishinaabe dispensary owners in Ontario recently cleared a major legal hurdle when a judge refused the Crown's motion to dismiss the case.
Last year, the Assembly of First Nations called on federal politicians to recognize First Nations jurisdiction over cannabis and remove the regulatory barriers that exclude First Nations from the marketplace. Thus far, federal and provincial governments have held their Indigenous communities that Indigenous communities are able to harmonize their regulations with Canadian law, and governments have attempted to varying degrees of success to help with that process. I've got to say too that a lot of, I don't know about in other provinces, but I do know that a number of these dispensaries, especially the ones in Millbrook, have gone to their chief and council and said, can we? And chief and council have voted and said, yes, you can. So they're doing this with the expressed permission of their chief and council. It's not like they're going out there and saying, F you to everybody. They're out there. They ask their own nation, they like their own reserve, their own community, we're going to do this. Is this okay? And the community has said yes.
I'm glad they have community support, but I think they should have an inherent right to open up the business they want.
Well, they do. I'm not saying they're going to the federal courts to ask permission. These people who want to open these businesses are going to their chief and council. They're showing respect to their elders and saying, do you mind if we do this? And their council, who is their elders, is saying yes. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I tend to go a little further, and I think that individuals shouldn't even have to go to the council. If it's illegal substance in Canada, you should be able to sell it whatever you want. They're not
absolutely,
stopping them from selling porn.
But I do like if they're going to open any business on the reserve, they go to their chief and council and ask to if that's okay first. So why should cannabis be any more special than
and
else?
if they say no, you can't, then there should be some way to go to the community and say okay.
There absolutely is, but I mean, like they're like the point I am trying to make is the chiefs and councils are they're supporting these
standing
businesses.
behind it. Yeah. In most cases they are.
Millbrook First Nation is one that finds itself in such a position, and they have had a rocky relationship with the legal cannabis industry. Initially hopeful that the legalization would be a source of economic opportunity for the community. In 2018, the Band Council invested $5 million in licensed producer Cannabis growing facility in Stellarton, Nova Scotia, which opened in 2019 and was decommissioned in 2022, less than 3 years later. Financial statements show that Millbrook had lost more than $4.2 million on that investment amidst a broader market downturn for public cannabis companies.
Wow. This year, Millbrook First Nation published a report following a community consultation exploring the idea of sovereign cannabis regulations, concluding that there was significant community support for developing Millbrook laws and regulations. A group called the Micmac Cannabis Association has also formed in the wake of the raids and has argued that cannabis can be regulated informally by the customs and conventions of the Micmac people. It's unclear if Gugu's case will be escalated to the precedent-setting constitutional fight he appears to be angling for. An almost identical case in Cape Breton, where an Indigenous man was arrested for operating a dispensary on reserve land, was dropped by the Crown suddenly this past September, averting a planned constitutional challenge, and that's why they dropped it. I'm kind of upset about it, said the defendant, Albert Marshall. I would have liked to have gone all the way to the end of it, right to the Supreme Court, to justify our inherent right to trade medicine or trade plants. And that's why it was dropped, because they don't want that inherent right enshrined in law.
Yes, I'm just getting the next story ready. Clicking buttons and coming back. So we're going to head over to Reuters. U.S. cannabis movement can learn from Canada.
Okay, Toronto, November 9th. The U.S. can't... Oh, here we go. I just lost it here. Okay, the U.S. cannabis industry would do well to heed lessons of Canada's growing plans, or growing campaign, Preliminary election results indicate that Maryland and Missouri will become the latest states to legalize recreational cannabis usage, bringing the total to 21, plus Washington, D.C., as a nationwide cannabis movement marches ahead, including U.S. President Joe Biden's recent pardoning of thousands of Americans convicted of possession. It will be important to keep things mellow. Too much hype contributed to the costly glut up north, where cannabis was first legalized 4 years ago. Ontario-based cannabis growth shares tumbled from a peak of around $50 a piece in April 2019 to below $3 earlier this year. It unveiled plans 6 weeks ago to offload its Canadian retail and subsequent plans for a U.S. domiciled holding company to hasten its entry into the market, helping give the $1.5 billion company a fresh spark.
That's a huge drop. Huge drop. Even as the United States
It
become
is.
more pot friendly, however, there's no guarantee that financial success will follow. Canada's illegal trade, for one, provides a cautionary tale. Illegal cannabis accounted for 66% of sales in the fourth quarter of 2021 compared to 9% before legalization, according to government figures. But as an industry trade group estimates, criminal activity still accounts for at least half the market. Meanwhile, the country's oversupply of licenses has not created fierce competition, but it also has led to excess supply. Approved cannabis growers destroyed, and this breaks my heart, a record quantity of unsold buds last year, the Financial Post reported. A punitive excise tax of about $1 per gram also eats into margins. Multi-state U.S. operators pay a hefty levy to Uncle Sam too, but it could be rescinded if cannabis gets removed from the list of federally controlled substances. What's more, unlike in Canada, where most operators need to sell provincial boards at wholesale prices, U.S. companies are often vertically integrated, meaning they capture the full production to retail margin. Canada distributors take as much as 30 to 40% of the retail price, according to the Bank of Montreal research. Yeah, fewer available licenses in the United States also means barriers to entry are higher. Even so, black market plagued California and other areas. There are increasing reasons to feel groovy about U.S. prospects, but investors should avoid getting too high on them. Oh, I love the puns.
Yeah, puns everywhere in that last one.
Yeah.
5 U.S. states had ballot initiatives to legalize the recreational use of cannabis, and preliminary results on November 9th indicated the measures would pass in 2 of them, Maryland and Missouri, according to individual state results. Votes in Arkansas, North Dakota, and South Dakota were set to fail. U.S. President Joe Biden said on October 6th that he would pardon thousands of people with federal offenses for simple cannabis possession, as well as initiate a review of how the drug is classified, Reuters reported. The Canadian government on September 22nd announced the launch of the Legislative Review of the Cannabis Act, which came into force October 17, 2018. The Legislative Review will evaluate, among other things, the effects on young people and progress made in deterring criminal activity and displacing the illicit cannabis market.
Illicit cannabis market. Yeah, it's their terminology will change eventually. It's one of the last things that we have to get done is change the government's terminology, like the illicit cannabis market. I mean, call us gray area, call us legacy, but this illicit stuff has to go. Like, I mean, it's not like it's a terrible drug. It's a helpful medicine. So,
okay, can't say legacy. That's positive.
Yeah. So, so heading over to MSN now. This is a long story, so we're going to try to power through it. With 2 states voting to legalize cannabis, coming to us from MSN Forbes, here's where pot is now legal in America, just so we can all plan our vacations.
Cannabis is legal in 21
Is this
2 out of 5 state ballot initiatives asking voters to legalize adult use cannabis passed during the midterm elections on Tuesday. Arkansas, North Dakota, and South Dakota rejected ballot measures proposing adult use cannabis legalization. Voters in Maryland and Missouri legalization in now 21 states that have 21 and older. The so-called green wave seen during the November 2020 election, when 4 states voted to legalize adult use and 2, including Mississippi, voted to legalize medical cannabis, hit a wall this year. The 2022 midterm elections were more controversial than we have seen in recent elections. As it relates to cannabis, Vivian Azar, an analyst at Cowen, wrote in a memo published on Wednesday.
Maryland and Missouri passing recreational cannabis is a significant event. Woo! But the states only comprise 3.8% of the adult population in the U.S. About 56% of voters in Kansas rejected legalization, while nearly This is what I get for not wearing my glasses. While nearly 55% of North Dakota voters and almost 53% of South Dakotans said no to cannabis. More than 65% of Maryland voters said yes to legalization, and 53% of Missourians. Paul Amaretto, the deputy director of nonprofit cannabis legalization advocacy group NORML, says it's a big deal that Maryland and Missouri, 2 states home to 7 million Americans, wisely chose to end the failed policy of prohibition. He also pointed out that voters in cities across the states like Texas and Ohio voted for municipal measures to decriminalize possession and use of cannabis. This is a testament to the fact that this policy remains very popular and that the adoption of legalization in the growing number of states around the country has not given voters any reason to reconsider their decisions, said Armentano.
The defeated ballot measures in Arkansas and Dakota does not spell repudiation of legalization, Armentano says. 2 forces come together against the ballot measure, he says. All 3 states are Republican strongholds, and voter demographics during midterm elections are historically older and less progressive. I don't know about this one. Given those realities, they were always going to be hurdles to climb, but they're not indicative of slowing down of momentum nationwide. Buyer's remorse among the American public in general, is Armentano.
I'm laughing at myself with my bad pronunciation and my lack of. Sorry. We're breaking up, and you were. I didn't hear you continue to speak, and I was having a good laugh at myself, and I know that people can see me, so I was just explaining myself. My apologies.
Sorry, Kevin Sabat, who's approaches to marijuana, fought to defeat each of the 5 ballot measures. Election day was a win. He sees the rejection of voters as a sign that federal legalization is not a sure thing. We're happy, it says, marijuana legalization is not a foregone conclusion. It's a deeply divisive issue, says Sabat. It can be defeated.
No, it can't. In Arkansas, cannabis industry stakeholders spent $14 million. I got it right that time. $14 million on issue 4, while the opposition spent around $2 million. The opposition did have a secret weapon. The state's political leaders were all against the initiative. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who served as the director of the Drug Enforcement Administration under President George W. Bush, led the state's opposition to legalization, saying it was the wrong direction for Arkansas. Governor-elect Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who served as former President Donald Trump's White House press secretary, also came out against it. I mean, come on, folks.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders never said anything out of her mouth that was true. Yeah. I never heard anything come out of her mouth that was true. Not once.
Yep.
All 3 states that rebuked adult use have legal medical cannabis markets. Arkansas's medical cannabis market generates $250 million in annual sales, according to Cowen, and North Dakota's medical market is even smaller, at about $20 million in annual sales. It was a surprise the ballot measures lost in South Dakota, which voted to legalize adult use cannabis in 2020. But was later overturned by the Supreme Court. Hazer calls the initiative's failure an upset. Sabat said the failure of 3 out of the 5 ballot measures should not be taken lightly. He believes it's a sign that many Americans do not like the direction his country is going with legalization. I think it slows the green rush, and we've seen in many parts of this country with legalization of cannabis, says Sabat. The battle is far from over. Sounds like we're going to war.
Yeah, I'm going to jump down here a little bit, down to below the picture of this gentleman here. While 68% of Americans support cannabis legalization, there are reservations. When asked what they think cannabis use has on what effect they think cannabis use has on society, 50% of Americans said that it has had a negative effect, while 49% positive, according to the recent Gallup poll. Even though most midterm voters in Arkansas, North and South Dakota voted no on adult use, Azar points out that the cannabis has moved to penetrate deeper red states, with more than 40% of voters in each of these states voted to legalize cannabis. The fact that Missouri, a Republican state, voted yes on its adult use ballot measure is a good indicator that cannabis legalization is bipartisan. And it is. Next week, a bipartisan congressional subcommittee will hold a hearing on cannabis decriminalization. And Representative Jamie Raskin, a Democrat from Maryland, and Representative Nancy McKee, a Republican from South Carolina, who introduced the bill to legalize cannabis, will host a hearing to examine the potential benefits of cannabis decriminalization at a federal level. The hearing will discuss racial disparities in cannabis enforcement and allowing the cannabis industry to better access the mainstream financial system. For Amaretto, the 3 losses are not indicative of a pullback in attitudes around legalization. I don't think anybody today is thinking that anything other than the wind continues to be at our back, he says. We have as much momentum as ever. And I agree. I think people are just, a lot of people say no because they're trying to watch what's going on and get a better idea of what's happening with cannabis before they move forward.
And there's still a lot of people in these red states, Arkansas, North Dakota, South Dakota. They're older people. They've been fed this garbage their entire lives. That you're going to go insane if you have a puff of a joint or anything like that. So, I know there's got to be some trepidation in people like that, but it is changing. I watched it in my mother, her change in her life, yep. and I watched it with all her friends, so it is coming and it can't be stopped. No,
it is. People will start supporting it without realizing that they're doing it. Absolutely. So now we are heading over to my favorite publication. Last story before the break, The Fresh Toast. I love this publication. I don't know why, I just do. And we're gonna talk about how much does cannabis cost. And this is a story coming to us from the United States. So we're gonna chat about their costs down there, apparently.
Unlike products that are skyrocketing in price, cannabis is still illegal on a federal level and therefore not regulated the same way. The rise of inflation and increasing price feels inescapable right now. From the grocery store to the news of the politicians' speeches on the campaign trail, increased costs are currently embedded in everyone's mind. For those who enjoy cannabis recreationally or rely on its medical benefits, this talk of rising prices may have you worried about the price of cannabis. As we have previously reported, however, the price of cannabis is not rising with the rate of inflation. In fact, it is reaching an astonishing lows in some cases. According to Cannabis Benchmark's recent U.S. Cannabis Spot Index, both Colorado and California spot prices for wholesale flower fell to new all-time lows this week, with the outdoor harvest yet to come to market in full force.
Mm-hmm. The dip in prices may have you wondering what is going on in the cannabis market. More importantly, it might have you wondering how much cannabis costs these days exactly. But the answer is a bit tricky, mostly because it is still illegal on a federal level. Each state sets its own cannabis policies, and in turn, the price of cannabis varies from state to state. On average, according to the OxfordTreatment.com, the national average for an ounce of high-quality cannabis is currently, holy shit, $326. Wow. Phew, I just had to catch my breath on that one. An ounce
That's
of
U.S. dollars, too.
Yeah, I know. Holy jumpins. I go up to BC and pay $40 an ounce for high-quality cannabis, right? That's Canadian dollars. An ounce of medium
I buy
quality.
it every week for $80 to $100 every week, and it's very, very good quality.
Yeah, and this is their prices coming down. Remember, we just talked about that a second ago, right?
Yeah.
So their medium quality cannabis is $266 an ounce, and apparently this is taking a dip. On the national average, a price of a joint is $7.59.
Wow.
With that said, prices are not likely to rise in the next few months and could even drop further. I freaking hope so for our, next door neighbors here. But this, of course, all depends on where you live. Perhaps the best question to ask in these uncertain economic times is where cannabis is the most expensive and where it's the cheapest.
Topping the list is the most expensive place to buy cannabis in the United States is Washington, D.C., according to the OxfordTreatment.com. An ounce of high-quality cannabis is $597.88. Next on the list is North Dakota, where an ounce of the same cannabis costs $383.60, followed by Virginia, where it costs $364.89. These are places where cannabis use is somewhat restricted. In D.C., it is illegal to purchase. In North Dakota, it's only legal for medical use. And in Virginia, it's not legal at any level, according to the same site.
Wow. To put it in even simpler terms, while a joint on average costs $7.59, in the nation's capital, you are likely to pay almost double at $13.92 a pop. And we're probably talking a half-gram joint, right?
That's a joint.
Yeah, like a half-gram joint. That's insane. What most weed or cannabis enthusiasts are really after is knowing where they can find the cheapest good weed in the country. If that's what you're looking for, head west. The state with the lowest price for quality cannabis is Oregon. While according to the same Oxford treatment data, an ounce of high quality cannabis will cost you just $210.75 on average. The second cheapest state to buy cannabis is another West Coast state, Washington. Third on the list is Colorado, where an ounce of high quality cannabis is $241.74. All three of these states have legal, medical, and recreational cannabis. The markets are well established in these states, and as in the industry competition. This means there is ample supply and competition, which likely contributes to these lower rates for quality cannabis.
And one statistic that puzzles some who follow the price of cannabis is why it has seemed to drop in the midst of the inflationary times of 2022. According to Andrew Livingston, Director of Economics and Research at the Denver-based cannabis law firm Vincent Cederberg, LLP, there are several reasons for this, including heavy competition within the regulated market, high taxation rates, the undercutting of prices by illicit or unregulated operators, including street dealers, and the natural growing pains that come with running a business in uncharted territory. Everything from the illicit market to increased competition in established legal markets contributes to the low price of cannabis today. Also, unlike products that are skyrocketing in price, cannabis is still illegal on a federal level and therefore not regulated the same way.
Yeah, and we just have another quote there, but I'm gonna cut us off just because we have a lot of great stories. Well, that's really interesting. That's really expensive cannabis. I tell you, if I ever do get to take my
price of.
Yeah, no, it's gross. $600 on this side of the country in the United States. I'm hoping to someday take my grandchildren down to Florida to take them to Disney World. And, my first stop is going to be at a dispensary, but holy Joe Jitzel, $600 an ounce.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody can afford that, especially a patient that it's almost impossible. That's why there is a black market there, and that's why there will always be a black market there if it's that.
That's right. Well, there's going to be a black market everywhere, and that's going to keep some good competition. But that means, that story being over means that it's time to pay some bills. So that means you'll be hearing from our sponsors while Glenn and I get ready to bring you more cannabis news and a mushy moment after the break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
When you think of the number of unique products developed in the fields, kitchens, and labs at Legacy 420, it's hard to think that one stands out above the rest. But tell that to the thousands of people who have tried this amazing breakthrough product.
This is our Sacred Salve. This is actually our extra strength. It comes in 5 different strengths. It's all natural, all organic. It typically works within 10 to 15 minutes of putting it on. It's good for arthritis, it's good for inflammation, any kind of pain. We're very proud of it.
Sacred Salve, so easy to apply, along with soothing relief. To select a strength that's right for you, come in and talk to your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
Pace Radio Network, by patients, for patients, and for those who want to know.
BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. Visit our hydroponics superstore at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville and we'll show you how to grow your own quality cannabis for pennies per gram. We're open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Thursdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Call 613-967-9888. BMA Hydroponics. It's worth the drive. The only way to go.
CP operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888 and grow on with CP. Let's share PACE everywhere. That way it can help create peace. People everywhere advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more. We've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
We're back. We're back. I have to stop laughing. We're back and we're live. Glenn, we've got 4 more stories.
I got to say, I love that new 420 commercial. It's a good one.
Yeah. We've got 4 more stories to cover, including our mushy moment. And we've got some comments happening over on the side. They were this gentleman is saying no tickets for pot consumption on porches and in yards, which is the way it should be. It's your own home, right?
Yeah,
it's your own home. So we're gonna head over to the next story. We're heading over to StratCan. I was having a good laugh during the break, and now we're going to talk about crafting the perfect infused pre-roll. And Glenn told me before we started the show that he has never had an infused pre-roll, and I think Glenn should go get himself one.
I mean, other than putting cannabis and oil and hash together, I've never had an infused pre-roll. So since infused pre-rolls began to hit the Canadian market late last year, they've been gaining popularity among consumers and producers alike. While consumers are enticed by the promise of boosted potency and flavor, producers are finding that this new product category can be difficult to keep on store shelves given steadily increasing demand. By manufacturing infused pre-rolls is no straightforward affair. Basic non-infused pre-rolls are challenging enough to produce on their own. An extraction and infusion requires expensive equipment and scientific expertise. Scott Walters, who's the president and CEO of Big Concentrates Co., says that in addition to considering things like paper, flour mill size, and machine equipment selection, which all factor into the traditional pre-rolls, when working with extracts, environmental considerations play a much bigger part.
You have to keep the room nice and cold and dry when we're mixing media, when we're mixing bubble hash or diamonds. It's increasingly important to keep the room clean, work in smaller batches, and work with teams that know exactly how the material is going to react. Walters says his team typically works in temperatures that are in the low teens to prevent their extract inputs from melting and becoming difficult or impossible to work with. Over at Pinners, which recently began contract manufacturing infused pre-rolls for other brands. CEO John Prentice, same name as you, gives similar advice. Joints are challenging to begin with. You've got to produce, you've got this product that people want to have a great experience when they smoke it, and it's really critical that the construction and how the joint is put together is done properly before you get to what goes inside. It gets complicated with infused joints because you have all these parameters around making sure the product is harmonious. He adds that because they're categorized as an extract, there's a lot less variability allowed in a given batch in terms of potency. So you have to get a little more scientific about how you're approaching mixing your ingredients together to come up with your formulation.
Where both Walters and Prentice stress the importance of starting from the basics when manufacturing infused pre-rolls. At ANC Cannabis, a contract pre-roll manufacturer based out of Alberta, CEO Terence Rutter says he and his team basically needed to start from scratch with the manufacturing process for their infused SKUs. It is 100% different than traditional pre-rolls. We had to essentially reinvent our entire system, which was probably the most challenging aspect of becoming one of the leaders in infused pre-rolls. Treating it like this was a traditional pre-roll was a big mistake we made at first, he continues. We grossly miscalculated how complex this product would be, how demanding and taxing it would be on our facility. It requires 2 times the manpower of traditional pre-rolls. Wow.
There are more steps than a traditional pre-roll. It's no longer just mill, roll, and deliver. There's a lot of quality and a lot of consistency pieces that go in, which made us really develop and adapt that and become more scientific in our approach. So we created a lot of new checks and balances along the way. Adding to the complexity of the situation, there are many different types of extracts that can be used in pre-rolls, that can be infused into pre-rolls, from the basics like keef and diamonds to higher end inputs like rosin and shatter. They all come with their own unique advantages and disadvantages. At Big, their infused blunts are a natural expansion of the bubble hash their brand is well known for. High quality inputs are the name of the game, and Walters puts it quality in, quality out.
Yep. But for contract manufacturers like Pinners and ANC, different clients have different needs, so their outfits need to be prepared to deliver any potential combination of inputs. According to Prentice, THC diamonds are by far the easiest to infuse in pre-roll. However, they don't do much to affect the quality of the product aside from just amplifying the effect. So while they might be a good option if the flower is already top-notch, if that isn't the case, they can leave the smoking experience feeling hollow. In terms of dealing with higher-end extracts like rosin and shatter, or liquid inputs like distillate, things become more challenging. What really sets us apart, Router at ANC, or says Router at ANC, is we have one of the only true infusion methods for fluid concentrate. We can actually infuse flour with any fluid concentrate available. Wow.
Meanwhile, at Pinners, Prentice says that they've been working with bubble hash, keef, and diamonds, and are in the process of developing methods of using more challenging inputs like live resin, shatter, and distillate. Different extract inputs also affect the smoking experience. According to Prentice, diamonds don't really slow down the burning. Where you'll start seeing things burn a little slower and take their time is more when you start getting into the live resins, the shatter infusions, the distillate infusions, because you are adding some component of moisture or oil into the product. So that is going to slow down its burn rate and create a nicer experience. Walters and the team at Big have used this in crafting their infused blunts to provide a longer smoking experience.
He says that Big's consumers are looking for the flavor and quality that we give them in a rosin in an easier to smoke format. So they're aiming for a really nice slow burn and a really beautiful experience, noting that Big's infused 1 gram blunts can burn continuously for upwards of 30 minutes. Awesome. In terms of demand, the sky's the limit. At ANC, a company that began as a micro producer, then expanded to micro processing, and eventually became a standard producer, Rutter says that they knew infused pre-rolls would eventually take off. We saw how popular they were in other markets like California, but the sheer velocity caught me off guard. It was like wildfire. Around November 2021, there were just 1 or 2. Now, a year later, it's one of the fastest growing product categories. He adds that currently, roughly 50% of ANC's pre-rolled output is infused, but he expects by this time next year, that could rise to 75%.
And that's pretty cool. So yeah, Glenn, go get yourself an infused pre-roll and give them a go.
Now, how do you tell the difference between what's actually infused there? Do they spell it out for you?
Most places will, yeah. Like if you go in and you buy Moon Rock, it'll tell you that there's oil and keef or shatter and keef or yeah, for sure. Heading over to our next story, keeping the good. You go get one. You should. You really should. I can't wait to hear about the experience. Heading over to the Fresh Toast, cannabis business owner issues warning after high school students got sick from dabbing, aka they greened out.
After some high school kids overdosed on dabs, a cannabis business owner emphasized the importance of educating kids and parents on cannabis. Cannabis business owner from Billings, Montana, wants to make people aware of the dangers of dabbing. His statement comes after some local high school students reported feeling sick after consuming cannabis dabs. Didn't I just read they overdosed a second ago? But it says
I mean, like an overdose on cannabis is greening out.
Yeah, well, it's a little different when you say overdosed or they feel a little sick. That's a little way different thing. Rich Ambromet, the CEO of Montana Advanced Caregivers, explained that dabs are much more concentrated than other cannabis products, and that overdose of them can feel and produce symptoms akin to being drunk. Wow. Okay. So if it gets you drunk, you overdosed. It would be like drinking too much, he said. You're going to get nauseous, vomit, want to lie down. You're going to want to sleep. You're not going to be very coherent.
No, it happened to me when I came home after my first iboga dose last July. When 3 days later, I was sitting at the people I was staying with. I was sitting at their house. We had supper, but I had been drinking these cannaritas all day, so highly infused drinks. And when we got to supper, I was stoned out of my tree. Like I was way too high because I had reset my cannabinoids and I greened out. I greened out hard, and all of that happened to me. Every single last thing happened to me. I got started feeling dizzy. I got nauseous. I vomited, and then all I wanted to do was lay down. All I wanted to do was sleep. I slept for like 14 hours. It was not fun. Not fun at all.
Now, would you compare it to being really, really drunk?
Well, yeah, no, I needed help walking. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I had to repeat myself 2 or 3 times to get the people to be able to understand. They had to pick up all the words because I couldn't talk very loud and very well. So absolutely. And that was an overdose with cannabis, right? I overdosed on cannabis, but an overdose of cannabis isn't going to kill you. It's going to make you feel like you are sick, like really sick, and you'll vomit and you'll stagger and you'll talk slurred, and it's not fun at all. He then said that dabbing is often used by medical cannabis users or people who have built up a cannabis tolerance over the years. If you came in with no tolerance and used something with 80% THC, it would be a miserable experience, he said. Your average cannabis these days is 18 to 22%, and dabs can be upward to 90, 92%. I've even had some that's been 98.7.
Yeah.
He then called for more information before a product is consumed and equated cannabis to alcohol in terms of different strengths and effects depending on the type. Educating the people in public safety is the most important task I believe we have right now. And I hate cannabis being compared to alcohol, but it's a good way to get people to understand, because a lot of people understand alcohol and it's various, wine and beer is anywhere between 4 to 7%. And then you've got this is that percent. And cannabis is kind of similar. Your THC varies in percentages from plant to plant to plant to plant to plant. So yeah, even though I hate it, I understand why they used it.
Earlier this week, 2 students from the local high school were taken to the hospital after overdosing on dabs. Public school superintendent Greg Upham encouraged parents to speak with their kids regarding cannabis. You need to understand that this level of THC and what the legalization of cannabis is all about for our kids, he said. Despite the scare, all students involved are now okay.
Absolutely. They overdosed, they felt ill, and then they woke up the next morning probably feeling better than they have in a long time, because that's the way that cannabis works. Once once you're done being overdosed, you're feeling good, right?
The only thing I can compare it to is like overdoses, like of heroin or something like that, where you're dying, right? But I always think of like overdose of alcohol. I know you can alcohol poisoning, but I've had the bed spins like everybody else, many times when I was younger. And
that's an overdose with alcohol. I mean, it may be a minor one, but it is still an overdose, right? And an overdose with cannabis is different than like a lot of them. You do run the risk of getting sick, but an overdose of cannabis for most people means that you're going to sleep 12 hours.
Yeah,
right.
Makes sense.
But it is an overdose nonetheless. But yeah, it would be nice if they had different language so we didn't mistake it with the same overdose of heroin or fentanyl.
Yeah, see, that's
or
what
something
throws
else.
me when you say overdose. I always think of someone in the hospital and they're pumping their heart to bring them back, you know? And that's not the situation with cannabis.
No, an overdose is too much of, but too much of something. For every something, you get a different result. Like if you overdose on sugar, I mean, you're going to end up with, like diabetes and overweight, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you
I'll be
overdose
bigger
on
than I already am.
caffeine, you're gonna start vibrating, and so everything is a little different, right? That's all. But I understand where you're coming from. But guess what time it is? Guess what time it is?
Oh, it's the mushy time.
Okay, we've got 6 minutes and 2 stories. Here we go. We're heading over. We're going to talk about. We're heading over to marijuana in a moment. We're going to talk about Colorado voters approve psychedelics legalization ballot initiative. Woo!
And Colorado voters approved an initiative on the ballot to legalize possession of certain psychedelics and create psilocybin healing centers on Tuesday. More than 4 years after Denver became the first U.S. city to decriminalize so-called magic mushrooms, setting off a national reform movement, the state has now legalized low-level possession for a variety of psychedelics while following Oregon's lead in authorizing licensed facilities to administer supervised psilocybin services. Wow, that was hard for me to say.
Goodness. Possession, use, cultivation, and sharing of psilocybin, ibogaine, mescaline, not derived from peyote, DMT, and psilocin will be legalized for adults 21 and older. Look at that list. Oh, my God. Okay, Cindy, you got 3 minutes for this story. Keep going. For adults 21 and older, without explicit possession limit, there will be no recreational sales component. Oh my goodness, we don't need that. That's amazing. Okay, Cindy, keep going.
Wow.
The Department of Regulatory Agencies will be responsible for developing rules for therapeutic psychedelics program where adults 21 and older can visit licensed healing center to receive treatment under the guidance. And there is DMT and iboga on that, folks.
Wow.
There will be a 2-tiered regulatory model where only psilocybin and psilocin will be permitted for therapeutic use at licensed healing centers until June 2026. After that point, regulators can decide whether or not also to permit regulated therapeutic use of DMT, ibogaine, and mescaline. How beautiful is that? Whew.
Wow. A 15-member National Medicine Advisory Board will be responsible for making recommendations on adding substances to the program, and the Department of Regulatory Agencies would then authorize those recommended additions. The advisory board's membership will specifically include people who have experience with psychedelic medicine in a scientific and religious context. Nice. People have completed their sentence for conviction related to an offense made legal under the act will be able to petition the courts for record sealing. If there's no objection from the district attorney, the court will need to automatically clear that record. Nice.
Oh, this is a truly historic moment. Is it ever? I'm almost in tears. Colorado voters saw the benefit of regulated access to natural medicines, including psilocybin, so people with PTSD, terminal illness, depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues can heal. Measures co-proponents Kevin Matthews and Veronica Lightning Horse Perez said in a press release, "We look forward to working with the regulatory and medical experts and other stakeholders to implement this new law." I am going to cut this story off there only because of time restraints. Please go read this story. Oh my God, I'm just vibrating with excitement. This is absolutely phenomenal. They put DMT and ibogaine and mescaline on this, and I think that that's just phenomenal. Talk about being able to heal people. It's beautiful.
All at the same time, too.
Yeah, it's super exciting. So we are heading over. To the final story. We have 3 minutes for this story. This one caught my eye and it made me giggle. Over at High Times, when I was looking for a cannabis story, this pops up. National Park Service asks visitors to stop licking the toads. As we all know what toads produce.
National Park Service is warning people not to lick the Sonoran desert toad, a species that excretes the psychedelic compound
5-MeO-DMT. Sorry.
The National Park Service is asking visitors to its facilities to refrain from licking toads, cautioning them that the practice can make a person sick. The warning includes a night vision photograph of a toad with glowing eyes and the declaration, "All glory to the toad." A reference to the animated television series Futurama. I'm sorry. The National Park Service posted the warning on its official Twitter account last week, noting that Sonorant desert toad, who's a bufo alpers, is one of the largest toads found in North America, measuring nearly 7 inches. The toad, which is known as the Colorado River toad, has a self-defense mechanism that causes the amphibian to secrete a toxic substance when disturbed. The secretion contains the compound 5-MeO-DMT, a typtamine class psychedelic drug that can also be found in some species of plants.
It's a great medicine. I'll go lick all the toads. Let's scare them and lick them. As we say, free 5-MeO-DMT. No, it's actually, you have to do more with it. You have to kind of get all the dirt and stuff out of it before you use it. As we say with most things you come across in a national park, whether it be a banana slug, unfamiliar mushroom, or a large toad with glowing eyes in the dead of night, please refrain from licking it, the National Park Service wrote on Twitter. The psychedelic 5-MeO-DMT is similar to the drugs DMT and bufotine. All 3 compounds have been used as entheogens by South American Indigenous cultures in spiritual ceremonies in New Mexico. The desert toad is considered threatened by collectors that want to use the animal for drug use, according to a listing by the state's department. And I'm going to have to cut this one off there. And there he is. What a beautiful, magnificent creature he is. We love you, Bufo alvarius. He brings a beautiful medicine.
I haven't laughed through the whole story yet. That was the first one. The whole story.
Yeah, no, that was good. I'm so glad I picked that story. They're warning you to not lick the toads, but I'm telling you, Bufo is a wonderful medicine. But with that, that's it, folks. That is our Reefer Reporters for today, November 10th. And from the Legacy420.com news desk. And in closing, we'd like to say thank you for watching, and thank you to our sponsors, BMA Hydroponics, Legacy420.com, and the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop in Campbellford, Ontario. And don't forget, you can catch Reefer Reporters Reverend Kelly and Al this Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Have a great time.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. Visit our hydroponic superstore at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville, and we'll show you how to grow your own quality cannabis for pennies per gram. We're open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Thursdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Call 613-967-9888. BMA Hydroponics. It's worth the drive.
The only way to go.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.